being triggered, being activated, and feeling all of the stuff as an adult today, when the truth is what's been activated is all that stuff from back then, which is why the button push, right, as I talk about, feels so huge, because it's activating something that's 15, 20, 30 years old that's never been resolved. So the fury, right, the frustration, the rage, the sadness, the confusion, all just pops right up into present day. And unless we address that, right, unless we manage emotion truly and heal ourselves, then that stuff will continue to come out. Again, the body keeps the score. The body is holding all of that stuff. And our responsibility as adults is to get rid of it all, to release it, let it sink through the floor out of our feet so we don't have to carry it and we don't have to pass it on, whether to the next generation, to our lovers, to our friends, to anybody that we choose to bring into the fold, especially as we're healing.
Hello and welcome back to Healing and Growing Hand in Hand podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Tickle, and our guest today is Jaclyn Borgia, and she was originally the Sassy Shrink. I think you can tell us a little bit about that. That's pretty cool. I didn't mention this before the recording, but one thing I liked to read about what you help women with is you're an online therapist, which I think is really cool. And online therapy is absolutely, I've done online therapy. It's a good thing. So you're an online therapist and you're a coach for women.
Yes.
And a lot of what you deal with is anxiety. You help them build their self-esteem and confidence, or you also help those struggling with grief and loss. So that's awesome. So welcome, Jaclyn.
Thank you, Lisa,
Thank you for
having
being here.
me here today. I'm very excited to chat with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. We were chatting a little bit before we started the recording, and I like the topic that we're going to talk about, and what we're going to talk about is attachment and attachment bonds and the abuse that goes on in there, and the, like I was saying before we started, the codependency and all the yuck that goes with that.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and I know this is, like you said, right in your wheelhouse. So yay, we'll get a lot of great information. And and I dealt with this too. I mean, this was something that I dealt with too, and I'm still trying to understand it. I think I've overcome a lot of it, through a lot of my healing. But I think that there's always more to know about it. So anyway, first tell us about you.
May I comment? I appreciate that you said that. I think the healing is never done. The work is never done. We are lifelong learners. In fact, I had a therapist 100 years ago who said to me, at the time she was in her 70s, and she said, Jaclyn, I'm still learning. I'm still learning. And one day I'm going to die and then the learning will be over. But for now, I'm just always gathering info. So I can appreciate that.
Yep.
Lisa,
I really believe it's a good thing to learn something every day if you can.
Another wrinkle in the brain.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Definitely.
So tell us about you.
What can I share specifically? The Sassy Shrink, right? You can expect from me a little bit of humor and sass. I am both a cheerleader and a challenger, which means that I am going to hold my clients accountable. I love them. I'm going to reach through the computer screen and hold them, cry with them, laugh with them. They feel all of that. And also I remind them of the things that they share with me. I hold up the mirror. Did you hear what you just said? Right? And I remind us of what the goals are. So again, I'm a cheerleader. I'm a challenger. I'm always a support. And I really love what I do. I'm very lucky. I think I seem to be one of the few these days who really enjoys who I work with, what I do, even the back end stuff, what it means to prep and prepare for a conversation or to meet someone new for the first time. I'm exactly where I need to be. This is such my purpose. Yeah.
Well, and by treating your clients that way, where you're holding them accountable, but you're also giving them love and support that they need, that's kind of the combination that we need in order to heal. Because, we do need times of compassion, but we also need to be have our feet held to the fire a little bit sometimes and be held accountable for our stuff. So it sounds like you're having a lot of success. That's great.
Absolutely. I think there is a combination between that love and that sense of accountability. We can truly only be held accountable by folks who we trust, have our best interest at heart. And I think that's part of, building a relationship with your clients, with your clinicians, that you need to build that beautiful rapport so that when your clinician says to you, hey, Sally, remember what we said to me last week? That's a little conflicting, or those pieces don't match up. What's going on here? If we don't demonstrate that with love and support and care, then how are we going to receive that?
You know, and that's true. The safe space is so much in how that message is presented to us, right?
Mm.
Because, you know, the way messages were presented to us before was quite abusive. And so that's one of the, what am I saying, gifts of being a good therapist, is being able to deliver that message, that tough message, without, you know, without having that person feel like they're, you know, the shame coming up. That's what would always come
Yes.
up for me. It, you know, is the shame would show up and then I would shut down.
There's enough shame, especially in the
Yeah,
room, and the last thing a person needs is for their clinician to judge them or to invite
yeah,
any more shame. The goal, in fact, is to invite it and wrap our arms around it so we can coddle it and love it and help it dissipate.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. And that really is one of the big things that we need in order to begin or go deeper into our healing journey. It's so important. And I can't say it enough that we it's so important that those of us that are overcoming the childhood abuse and trauma is that we do work with a trauma therapist, someone who knows trauma. It's not just a talk therapy.
No.
There's much more to it. There's different modalities, and there's kind of different techniques in how you approach it. And so, yeah, that's so important. And I absolutely believe in therapy. And like I said, I have done online therapy, and you know, it works really great. And I was able to really connect with my therapist, because I know that was one thing I was kind of worried about, is
Mm.
being able to connect with the therapist. And you know, but it worked. I mean, I had a really good therapist too. Maybe that had a lot to do with it, but I was
It's
able to
important.
connect with her and it felt safe.
Yes. Yes. Part of what I love about online therapy is that you, as the client, get to create your own safe space. You get to choose where you are, whether it's in the closet of your bedroom or your car.
Yeah.
You get to decide to if you close the door or if you let your kiddos run around or your pet sit on your lap. So you truly get to create your own
Mm,
sense of safety, and you trust that your clinician, or whoever your therapist is going to show up in your computer screen. I think too, it
right.
builds a certain or creates a certain amount of rapport because for some, I live right here in their computer, in their cell phone. They can get in touch with me anytime. I'm not going to pop up at the Target. We don't necessarily live in the same area. So
Oh
there's that
yeah.
sense of that sense of safety, security, and just enough
Yeah.
distance, if I may say.
Yeah, yeah, arm's length. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, my therapist actually, I think about it, she does live in the same town,
Ah.
and that would be odd, pretty awkward.
I can tell you
Oh,
that
hi.
that has happened to me. I have been in, I want to say like a Walmart, a Target, some, big major store. And I rounded a corner a couple of years ago and came face to face with a client's mom. And just out of
Oh,
pure humanity, we looked at each other and smiled. And she started to open her arms and looked at me with this face like, do I have permission? I said, come here. And we just embraced.
oh,
And then she was gone. It was that quick. It was that beautiful and appropriate. And then the truth is, I never saw her outside, of the therapy space again. So it was just a one and done. That's actually happened a couple of times to me.
oh. That's kind of cool, though.
It is
That's
cool.
cool. I bet it's for both the
Yes.
patient and you, both. Yeah, that's really
Yes.
cool. Oh, I love that. So yeah, so I'm saying, you know, I'm such a firm believer that we need the therapy in order to begin or go deeper into our healing journey. And if it means that you can only do it online, then do it. You know, it's not a bad thing at all. I mean, it's really, I think COVID kind of took care of that whole, you know,
It did.
the thought of it, yeah, it made it more normal, I guess.
Normal and comfortable and appropriate. Absolutely
Yeah,
appropriate. We can still very much
certainly
create a
necessary.
relationship. Definitely
Yeah, yeah,
necessary. I think in general, we all
yeah,
need therapists. We all need support. We all need unbiased, unconditional love and care. And that's truly what the
yep,
therapy space provides. It's a safe space to come up in here and figure out who you are, and with a partner in crime who has your back always.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Okay, so let's get into our topic of talking about attachment bonds. So
Mm.
let's start with the definition of attachment bonds. What is that?
I'll tell you what, let's cut off the word bonds, right, and speak specifically about attachment.
Okay,
There are essentially four different kinds. Some folks talk about three, some folks have added more. So there's a bunch of research out there. I would encourage anybody who's listening to do a little bit of Google just to fact check me. But what I talk a lot about is about four different kinds. of attachment. There's
Okay.
secure, right? There's disorganized, and there's two different kinds of anxious attachment. Most of our folks who I bet are dealing with abusive relationships, whether that's coming from um, romance, whether that's specifically in childhood, they're coming from anxious and disordered attachment, which means that the bonds, right? There's that word, the bonds, the relationship that they're creating or have created with their families, their parents, their village, right? Whoever is responsible for
Yeah.
helping raise them and rear them. It's not a secure one. It's not one of safety, of trust, of mutual respect and love and care. So already, because those initial first relationships are tainted, if I may say it that way, then it
Mm-hmm.
creates a pathway for other relationships to build that are also insecure, disorganized,
Mm-hmm.
not with the capability of meeting needs for both parties.
Yeah. So it's like the foundation, because that's kind of how my foundation was started, was just the insecurity. It was disorganized. It was chaotic. It was, there was abuse,
Yes.
and it didn't change. So I took that into my adult life.
Right? You took it to be your normal. This is what's expected. This is how it
Right.
is. So when we
Right.
go and attempt to date, or we create friendships, or we go to work and we, mesh with our boss and our coworkers, we're
Mm-hmm.
expecting a certain kind of treatment, and perhaps too on a certain kind of defense, because we're
True.
prepared for a certain kind of ugly to come our way. It's what we've grown up with. It's what
Mm-hmm.
we're used to. How could there possibly be anything different out there? Until you go to therapy and you learn that there is a different kind of attachment. There is a way to unpack and rid yourself of some of those things in order to create something more secure, not just in here, right, personally, but an opportunity to create security with other people in your life, should that be what you want.
Right. 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 Yeah, I know. Because and so much of, as I began my healing journey, I could see, I could start seeing some of my behavior, but I could see the cycles and everything that I was involved in the relationship. And it was,
Patterns.
it was just this constant cycle. And I could see it coming. I could see it coming. I could almost
Yeah.
predict it. And then of course, I hopped on that train and I did the same behavior.
Mm.
Right. And so it was just this vicious cycle. And I'm standing there watching this going, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And I didn't see a way out of it or how to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really frustrating.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I like to address what could potentially be a shameful thought or a shameful feeling. How am I supposed to know any different? And you're not. You're not. When you come from that
Mm-hmm.
kind of abuse and chaos, as you said beautifully, when we come from that kind of destruction, we truly don't know better. We may, on some level
Mm-mm.
inside, know that this is wrong, this is painful, it shouldn't be this way. And when we start to look outside of ourselves and see other blossoming relationships, other beautiful
Yeah.
families, we start to question what's going on in mine. And yet, it really
Yeah.
takes therapy and support and years of unpacking and understanding and retraining, right? Retraining
Mm-hmm.
brain, retraining body to be able to be in healthy relationships, because now we know what to expect. Now we'll learn what we need, and we'd be willing to advocate for that. It's a lot of work. It absolutely is.
It is. And I'll tell you, in my own life, I know what is true is that when I look back, when I finally put my timeline together, which I did this a few years ago, it
Mm.
was kind of strange how it came together, but I just kind of put the whole timeline of my life together. And it, instead, before, it was kind of splotchy, and I didn't have like this direct timeline. And as I was putting it together, I could absolutely see why I ended up in the relationships that I did. It
Ah.
made complete sense. You know, the thing that's interesting is I knew at a young age that I was being abused
Mm.
by my brother. I knew that because I did go through a process as a young teenager trying to decide if I would have kids, because I knew I was abused and I knew that it carries on.
Ah.
So I was aware at a young age, and I was aware of, I did do that where I could look at other families and go, well, gosh, I don't see, the same stuff going on over in that house that's going on in my house.
Yes.
And it's interesting, but the part that's, like I said, that's frustrating is you see that, but how do we change that? How do we stop that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I mean, the first thing is the self-awareness of actually seeing that, and witnessing it and understanding, okay, I see there's a cycle here. I mean, that's huge, because otherwise you just blindly do that every time. That's what I did for years.
Yes.
I was, doing the cycles over and over. And so for me, I remember seeing this and thinking, but I don't know what else to do.
Hmm.
So where do we start?
Where do we begin? Well, I think the first thing is some semblance of acknowledgement. I mean,
Right.
my heart hurts for you to have known at 14, 15 years old that something here was wrong,
Yeah.
and to then question what's my future going to be like, especially as a woman,
Hmm.
especially as a potential mom, a potential
Yep.
lover, a wife, all of those things. Wow. So I believe that there is a first step, and it's awareness. It's understanding at the very least that something's going on here and it's not okay. It's not okay.
Hmm.
I don't like how it feels, right? I don't like what it's doing to me. That is probably all we need in order to go seek out support and to be able to start talking about what's happening. Then building that relationship with your therapist, making sure that there is trust and safety as you start to put on the table, this is what's happening to me. This is how I feel about it. And admitting that you don't know what to do. There's a lot of fear in that. I'm in this situation and I can recognize that it sucks, that it's painful, and also I don't know where to begin. What an amazing
Yeah.
thing. And we work in therapy so much to address that shame. Folks who believe that they caused this, that they asked for this, that they deserve this. You're shaking your head, right? You
Hmm.
know what I'm talking about.
Oh
It's a
yeah.
devastation,
Hmm.
truly.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's a good combination. I'm sitting here thinking, let's go back to the different types of attachments that you were describing.
Sure.
And you said you say there's four different types of attachments, right?
I'm comfortable with what I was taught years ago, that there are four different
Okay.
kinds. Again, we can absolutely Google and come to find that there are different types, and there may be different types
I'm sure
depending
there's
on.
been some added.
Totally.
Yeah, yeah, and that's totally common. I get that. So let's talk about the four. Let's break them down again so the audience understands them. Because what I know to be true is, as I'm learning more and more about trauma, the effects of trauma, the behavior that comes out of trauma, all the nuances of trauma,
Mm-hmm.
it is helping me so much in my healing. It's actually propelling me more so, because what it's doing is it's identifying and it's separating the behavior from who I am. Because what I
Mm.
used to do is I used to take that behavior and it was my identity. Because back then I thought I was the only one that behaved like that. I'm the only one that thought like that. I'm the only one that behaved like that. And so as I'm doing the tons of research that I'm doing, and it's fascinating, and understanding it, it's helping me to separate that. And it's also helping me bring more self-awareness in my life so that I don't continue with those behaviors.
Yes.
So let's talk about those four different attachments, and how they affect us in our life.
Mm. Let's start with secure attachment. Secure is the ideal. And if I'm totally honest with you, I don't know if anybody comes to the table with secure attachment. We are all
Yeah.
humans. We're living on this planet. We're facing an election today. We're all in the throes of the chaos that is being a human being and life in general.
Right.
So I don't know if anybody truly comes from a secure attachment. And yet, like, if we're talking about it, secure attachment is coming from a loving home, one that does not have abuse, that does not have neglect, excuse me, a home that allows for the children both to be seen and heard, one that allows for collaboration, one that has boundaries and a lot of love. On the very opposite end of that, right, if I jump from one all the way to four, if appropriate, it's what we call disorganized, which is the complete opposite of security, which may, my friend, be where you came from, where there is
Mm-hmm.
mistreatment, where there is abuse, there is neglect, there is such chaos and devastation that children grow up, excuse me, really questioning themselves. Do I deserve this? Why doesn't my mom show up when I cry? Why is my father always yelling at me? Where are my parents? Why is nobody here
Yep.
for me? And a little kid is forced to really navigate what the world is like. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
by age 7, our worldview is pretty much intact. So picture coming from, you don't have to picture, right? Coming from a household by age 6, 7, 8, you pretty much understand how your parents feel about you and what the world is going to be like, whether or not you have to fight and defend yourself, how you're supposed to protect yourself from whatever it is that's attacking, or how you're supposed to go out into the world and find what you need because it's clearly not here. If we bounce
Yep.
to the other two styles of attachment, if we utilize a big umbrella word, anxious, right? Anxiety. So we have something called fearful avoidant. We have something called anxious preoccupied. And they're both very similar, which is why some folks tend to lump them together and just call it an anxious attachment, because essentially this is not completely disorganized and also not with the consistency and the true unconditional love that comes with secure attachment. Children who grow up in these kinds of homes tend to struggle with their needs being met, how often they get met or
Mm,
how fast they get met. So there creates this insecurity inside. There becomes this fear to ask for what's needed, or this desperation to ask all the time for what's needed. These people then end up growing up and they end up in relationships where they are considered needy. They're either pushing folks away because they're super independent, they've dealt with things on their own their whole lives, so they don't need or want or are fearful of that kind of true love and support, or the opposite, they're constantly reaching, grabbing, desperate for it because they didn't get it. And those patterns obviously that are created in childhood then come out in adulthood, and we see all sorts of relationships that are not healthy, not comfortable, not safe, not trusting, not respected. In fact,
mm-hmm.
I'm naming needs, aren't I? Don't we need these things in our relationships in order to truly want to be in them?
Right. And it's interesting because as you're describing that, I was kind of both. I was more on the needy side, definitely. I
Yeah.
was more on the needy side, but there was also a part of me that was like, nope, you know what? I don't need you. Like, I got this. I can do this. Because there was a point in time, I was a little older than 7,
Mm.
where an incident happened with my brother in front of other people in my family, my parents, as well as some family friends, and nobody stopped it.
Oh,
And I remember standing up thinking, oh, okay, got it. Nobody's going to protect me.
right.
Got it.
Right. I
So
have
there
to
was
have my
that
own
side
back.
of me. Yeah,
Forgive my
I got
interruption.
to take care of myself. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, so there was that side of me, right? And so there was a fierce independence, but then there was this fierce neediness. And I understand where they both come from. So the independence came from that.
Mm-hmm.
And the neediness came from another belief that came to me, that it was around the same time where my brother told me that nobody loved me, and I believed it. I
Yes.
honestly, in my heart, believed it. I remember it felt like somebody punched me in the chest when he said that, because it hurt so
Mm.
much, but because I believed it so much. So I had this mixed behavior, but I definitely leaned more towards the needy because I wanted somebody to love me. I wanted somebody to like me. So that was kind of more driving me than the independence. But if you crossed a line with me, I could cut you off. I could be independent. I don't need you. I'm fine. I got it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can appreciate how there's such duality here. Those two things can exist at the same time. We can very much be guarded, set boundaries, be afraid, almost avoidant and dismissive of the things that we desperately want and need. So it's almost like with
Mm-hmm.
one hand, we're reaching out for the kinds of things that we never got growing up. That doesn't go away, that sense of emptiness, that lack we need, and we're terrified to get, especially from the wrong person, the wrong relationship. God forbid we're hurt a second, third, fourth, fifth time.
Yeah.
So it becomes this crazy duality. How can I possibly want this and also be afraid of it? In fact, that's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
what I work on with my clients, is trying to understand that sense of shame, that low self-esteem, that desperation for confidence, trying to understand a certain kind of self-loathing, how we get to a self-love, how we appreciate and and practice a self-care, and then being able to take that into our relationships where we know what we're worthy of, we know what we bring to the table, and we on some level demand a certain kind of respect, a certain kind of love back,
Mm-hmm.
because through that healing journey, we know we're worthy of all the things that we want and need, even though we didn't get it growing up. It was not our
Right.
fault for not getting those things growing up. It now, however, is our responsibility as adults to go out into the world and find it. And of course, to meet our own needs
Exactly.
to the best of our ability.
Exactly. And I just want to talk to the listeners too and just share with them, like, when I'm thinking back to the times of when that desperation was in me,
Mm.
and as you were talking a little bit earlier, what kind of came to me is like, it was definitely little Lisa crying out. It was, and if somebody, and of course, because there was the neediness, right? And there was and so with neediness comes, I'm sure I overwhelmed people. And then of course they pull away from me, right?
Mm.
So what does that do? That just fuels that thing when you're that little girl. And I can tell you, it is at that moment, it is the thoughts that come to my mind is like, I just remember just feeling so completely 100% alone,
Yes.
so completely alone, and so different than everybody else, that I had to do something to stop the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so those things fueled me to do things that were even more foolish. The
Mm.
desperation would go, it was just as, it was again, another cycle, right? Those feelings would raise up in me, and then okay, how can I fix this? Because I can't have this person walking away from me. How can I have, how can I fix this?
Ah, right.
And
What
I
can
did
I
so
do?
much of this. Yeah. What's that?
I said, what can I do? Look how we take such responsibility. How do I keep this person here? How do I push them away if I don't want them
Yes,
near? What am I supposed to do about it?
exactly. It's something that maybe if I change within me, then they'll be okay. And this was in the time, and I was just talking with a friend the other day about, this was in the time when I was trying to control everything. And it wasn't because I was a jerk. It was because I was trying to keep a safe, I was trying to, if I control it, then I know the outcome. Right. And
Yes.
so it was at those times of, okay, well, here's the situation. I got to control this. I got to change this because this is really painful. This is really hard. And so I've got to do something to change this situation. And so my mind would start going into overdrive and trying to find, and it wasn't that I
Mm.
was trying to manipulate. I was really honestly trying to find a way to make it, to fix it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I think that's very misunderstood, the idea of manipulation, and I put that in quotes. That if we are in a relationship, romantic, platonic, it doesn't matter, with a person who presents anxious, who presents with a certain kind of attachment because they're quote unquote needy, it's typically because all they're trying to do is self protect. All they're trying to do is control things in such a way that they can then
Yeah.
receive the outcome that they're looking for. And let's be real, 9 times out of 10,
Right.
that outcome is love and acceptance and belonging and, again, needs. We need things from other people. We're social creatures. We need each other. So to feel a sense of responsibility, if I am going to get what I need to reach out into the world and get it and grab it. And yet, what we don't realize, especially in terms of behavior, how that can present as pushy or forceful or uncomfortable. It can rub up against some other folks' boundaries. And as you said earlier, it does, it pushes folks away. It presents in such a way
Yeah.
that other folks can't, they can't swallow it.
Yeah. It's too much. It's too much for them. Yeah. And,
It's too
and on
much.
one of my podcasts, I talked about too, at that time, was really lonely. It was really a lonely time, which just continued, to cause the cycles, right? Because again, trying to fix
Mm-hmm.
everything. And so what would you say to a listener who's out there, who I'm sure there's some women out there, men out there, that can completely relate to what I'm talking about, right? And maybe right now they don't have a therapist right now, right? And they're just in this place and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, what do I do? What do I do? What would you recommend in this moment that could help them get through? There's those moments, right? To get through that moment successfully.
Mm. I think the first thing I'd want to validate is that you're not alone. Whoever's listening, and you specifically, Lisa, you're not alone. We at times feel like such
Mm-hmm.
aliens, like we're the only ones experiencing something so horrific. And that too kicks up the shame. How could
Yeah.
I possibly share this with someone else who won't understand, who doesn't have a lived experience? And yet, that's where abuse lives. It lives in the dark. So we need to pull it out into the light. We need to
Yep.
find somebody that we trust, somebody that we are willing to let in, even just a little bit initially, and then that creates, an opening. It creates an opportunity for that light to get in. So anybody who's listening, the first thing I would say is, one, you are not alone, and two, go find somebody to break that ice. Find somebody to start to include, whether that is a professional, whether that's someone else in your life that you trust or you believe fully loves you. That can be a friend, it could be a coworker, it could be a family member, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. And should you not be able to find that person, especially, right, ladies and gents, if you live in Pennsylvania or New Jersey, please call me. Reach out to me. That's part of what I do, is to ensure that you are not alone. You're not alone in this
Mm-hmm.
process. You're not alone in your quote unquote baggage. You're not alone in your abuse and what happened to you as a child, and you are not alone in your healing journey, ever.
No, no. I did a lot of my healing in the beginning by myself because there wasn't stuff out there, and it's a very slow journey. And there's so
Yes.
much more out there now, so much more education, knowledge. We know so much more about trauma now, and there we have modalities that really work really well. And so the healing, it doesn't have to be that long process like it was for me. It's still, like you said, we're on our healing journey until we take our last breath, for sure. The thing
That is the truth.
that I find so refreshing, and I think you will too, is that as we heal and as we are educated about our trauma and how it affects us, it
Mhm.
it teaches us to manage the trauma in our life rather than it's managing us. And
Yes.
and it doesn't have that overwhelming feelings all the time. Like I was talking with a friend yesterday about triggers, and first, triggers happen, you're not even aware of it, and you're acting out and the behavior and all the craziness that goes on with the trigger. And then you become aware of the
Mm.
triggers. And then once you learn how to manage those triggers, you get to the point where you know the things that trigger you and you know how to go into them without being triggered. Or if you
Yes.
are getting triggered, you know how to get yourself out of it. And it doesn't turn into this.
Absolutely.
For me, it was a big fiasco when I would get triggered. It was a big drama ordeal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's part of what I think we find we judge. Our emotions are big and our reactions are huge and they
Yep.
push and scare other people away when the truth is the pain is so
Yep.
great and it's been held right in
Yep.
the body for so long that the only thing we know how to do is rush it out, push it, force it, get rid
Yep.
of it. So I'm with you. Every step of the way, we have to understand and honor what those triggers are, and without shame. We didn't create the buttons that sit on the
Yes.
middle of our chest, which I talk about all the time, how buttons get pushed and how it activates things inside of us. We did not create them. However, as adults, it is our responsibility to know that they're there and to manage them.
Yeah.
To manage them with
Yeah.
emotion regulation is genuinely, and I've seen this more and more online, it's suicide prevention, it's homicide prevention. If we can manage our own
Yes.
emotions, if we can handle the activation inside our bodies and let things go that don't serve, then we're actively taking care of ourselves. And we're making sure we're not harming others
Absolutely.
in our lives, especially those in close relationships to us.
You know that in the prison population that 97% of them have got some kind of childhood trauma or abuse in their life.
That is so unsurprising. So
I know,
unsurprising.
right?
And if we
Right?
talk to about,
When I was looking at the stat, I thought, oh, it's probably, I'm guessing probably like, 80, 90. And then I saw 97%. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
checks out, absolutely. How about drug addiction?
Yeah.
95% I bet
Yeah.
of that is coming from a place of trauma, neglect, needs not
Yes.
being met. If even we take just the umbrella idea of needs not being met before we sprinkle in absolute mistreatment, that's a basis for some unhealthy
Yeah.
attachments, because when we grow up and we are looking to our dependents to feed us, to shelter us, to clothe us, to make us laugh, to help us understand, to teach us, and we're not getting that, how is an adult
Mm-hmm.
supposed to grow up and navigate in this world without those basic tools?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I realize, and I think it's really powerful is
Mm.
we're what we were taught, right?
Yes,
So my normal is different than somebody else's, and I only know what I was taught, right?
absolutely.
And and I used to be someone who, and I know where this came from too, but I was also someone who used to think, well, I should have known. I should have known. Even as a kid, I should have known. Well, no, no.
No.
I shouldn't have known. Here's an example.
Mm.
This is kind of a funny one, though. So I was in eighth grade, and there was these. I've shared this story before. It's kind of cute, but I got my first pair of high heels, and I wanted these high heels really bad, and they were ugly. They were. I look at them back now, and they were ugly. They were very ugly. Then I loved them, and my mom said, "Okay, but you have to, you have to work extra, around the house in order to earn the money for them." So okay,
Ah.
that's fine. So I did. I earned the money. Very exciting. So I couldn't wait. Went and got them. Bought them at Sears. Came home right away. Went in my room. Put them on. Walked out. And the first thing out of my mom's mouth was, "You don't know how to walk in heels." I'm like, yeah, okay. I didn't know there was a way to walk in heels. Like I wasn't even aware of that. I was 13 years old.
Right.
I didn't even know that there was a way to walk in heels. But did she get up and show me?
Ah.
So that, so then it got to the point where that happened a lot. So we got, well, I should have known. I should have known. And I know a lot of other abuse victims, or survivors deal with that as well as, I should have known. I should have known. And no,
No.
I'm giving you a break on that. No,
Right. Quite
no,
the opposite,
it's
in
okay
fact.
not to know. And it's okay to say, I don't know, but I'll find out.
Yeah. Yeah. If I may, what's devastating is that your mom felt it comfortable to tease you, to pot shot in a way, instead of suggest, you don't know what you're doing. Let me help you. Let me show you so you have all the
Right.
information. Instead of just pointing out that you didn't have the right tools. and then perhaps going about our
Right.
business. This, right, this is the definition essentially of abuse that we can take into our futures, because now we are a person who should have known better, who should have figured it out, who can't ask for help. Because if we do, is this the
Yeah.
kind of treatment that we get? Hmm.
That's the key right there.
Yeah.
That is the key. You just nailed it. That I should have known, so I can't reach out for help because I'm supposed to know this. I'm supposed to know this.
At
And I
13
remember
years
when she
old.
said that to me, I was thinking, yeah, I'm thinking, oh, oh God, I guess I should have known. How come I didn't know? Why didn't I know that, you dummy? So that's
Yeah.
where that went. But it makes sense. And so that makes total sense. It's crazy. As I got older, not reaching out for help because the shame was so deep that I should know this.
Mm-hmm.
It's stupid of me to reach out to somebody because I'm supposed to know this. How many other listeners are dealing with that?
Oh, I bet everybody's raising their hand right now.
I know. But that just hit me just now where that twist came from, because I was hesitant to go get help. I certainly wouldn't share my stories because it was all my fault anyway.
Right. And then to run the risk of being told that again, to run the risk of being shamed even more, or have that
Right.
idea being reinforced by other adults
Right.
or other caregivers in your life. God forbid, right? One more person would have said or done something that reminded you, oh yeah, I don't have the tools. I'm not smart.
Right.
I'm not capable. And now we're talking about low self-esteem. We're talking about a lack of confidence and a
Mm-hmm.
true self-loathing. How could I not know these things? Because you're a
Yes.
child. Because you're a child. You're not born into this world equipped with these things. I believe that we are born into this world knowing that we're deserving of respect and love.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's why at some point, whether as a child or as an adult, most folks do reach out for therapy and support. They
Mm-hmm.
recognize that where they came from was some semblance of toxic and harmful, and that now those things are somehow still with them today, whether in body, right? Like Bessel van der Kolk talks about, body keeps the score. God knows trauma
Yep.
lives and stays in the body until we up and
Yep.
release it. Um, Dick Schwartz talks about internal family systems, about the little child inside. So much of our adult work looks like tapping back into that little kid, letting
Yep.
yourself feel and experience what it meant to not get those needs met, or to be ridiculed,
Yep.
to be mistreated, to be made fun of for not knowing. This is where low self esteem comes from, is because we weren't
Right.
actively lifted up. We weren't actively praised and supported and loved, even in our shortcomings. Our shortcomings. I put
Mm-hmm.
that in quotes, as if you not knowing how to walk in these 6-inch heels is a shortcoming. It's not a flaw, right? It's not a character defect. What it is, it was a brand new thing to you. And your mom, the
Yeah.
adult in your life, had an opportunity to stand right next to you, right? To come alongside you and support you in that. And instead, she dropped the ball, if I may say.
Yeah. No, she did. She did. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was kind of what she did. That was interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. That should have known got it, even went as far as this is when I think about this is really, and I'm putting this stuff out there because I'm trying to bring this stuff to light that kind of goes on in our head so our listeners can resonate with it. Those that
Yes.
resonate with it and understand that this isn't you.
Mm-mm.
This is what it can do. But
Yes.
even so far as I should even know what you're thinking, like
Hmm.
I should know what you expect of me without having to say it. Just it went that far. It went so far, and it was so important to me to be a chameleon so that it was part of the people pleasing and that you would like me, but and to make the relationship work. But I put that kind of pressure on myself,
Yes.
is I should even know without you sharing with me what your expectations are of me. I'm just supposed to know that.
Mm.
And yeah,
Mm.
right.
Look at the
All
pressure.
I know is what my expectations are, and sometimes they're not so good, but
The bar is
I can't
high.
expect it. Yeah.
Yeah, the bar is high when we come back home and expect ourselves to know certain things. Or again, it's these thought processes that reinforce, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. Therefore, I need to do all of these things to self protect, to hide, to make sure that nobody finds out. I love that you mentioned people pleasing, imposter syndrome, believing that someone will find
Yeah.
out that you're a fake. These are all ways in
Yeah.
which we defend and protect ourselves from what we believe is going to be an abuse coming down the pipeline. Most likely, too, because this is the kind of protection we needed to have, or, this is the kind of protection that we needed to execute, right,
Mm-hmm.
in order to save ourselves from whatever we grew up in, whether that looked like hyper independence, let me just deal with it on my own, whether that looked like constantly asking for help because somebody else needed to be needed. There's so many
Yeah.
things at play here. And now we've got so many unhealthy coping skills, like the people pleasing, like saying yes to
Mm-hmm.
somebody, like avoiding, truly just running away from the whole thing and choosing not
Yeah.
to focus in at all. All of these things end up being healthy, but from the standpoint of, I can't take another sense of hurt. I can't be hurt again, so I'll just do it this way. I'll do what I've always done.
Yeah. It worked
Yeah.
before, so it should work again, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
It
I
worked
love
then,
that you
so it
said
should
that.
work now. You know, you and that's so true. It worked then because our little minds found a way to kind of deal with it at the moment, and our little minds thought, "Ooh, that worked," and so we saved that for later. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And naturally, the world tends to reinforce that. It shows us or brings us people, it creates those patterns, it encourages us to behave a certain way, and then it just reinforces what we either create for ourselves or what we've been told growing up. Ah, I'm not
Yep.
deserving of these things. I have to be on point. I need to overthink. I need to control. I need, and I need to make
Sounds
sure
like
that
me.
those needs are met.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
However, they
it's
can
not
get
so
met.
uncommon.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, and you touched on something earlier, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, and I think it's really important is touching that inner child that's in us,
Yes.
and a lot of times when we're triggered, a lot of times when we act out like this, that's who's crying out. It's not the adult
Mm-hmm.
in us. That's why it seems so. Um, I'm trying to find the right word. It seems so over the top, I guess is the way, will come across over the top. It's because it's that little girl in me that is crying out and trying to get herself heard,
Yes.
And so I know what I would like to encourage the listeners to do. And one thing I've done is I've worked with little Lisa that,
Mm.
it's interesting because little Lisa, the little girl Lisa, had different abuse than the teenage Lisa. So it was
Mm.
very different. It was much more severe as far as the teenage one. So little Lisa in therapy in EMDR, I did actually work with her, and she got her voice. It was really cool. But then
Ah.
out of therapy, one of the things that I've done, I'm now working with teenage Lisa, and how I've done it just came to me to do this. And it's working. Is
Mm-hmm.
I'm writing to her, but how I'm doing it is it seems like she needs validation, a lot of validation. And so how it started is I wrote a letter to her. I started it with, hey, this is, adult Lisa. And I just started talking about some of the incidents that came up because one of the themes that ran through my life was it's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. Right. This isn't fair.
Ah.
And so, and teenage Lisa said that a lot. And so what I've done is I wrote a letter to her and I go over the situation. So, like a story will come up and I'll
Yes.
go, oh, I remember, do you remember when, when our brother did this, and then I write it out,
Mm-hmm.
and you were right. That wasn't fair. Like,
Yes.
and it's weird as I'm writing out the situation, the thoughts are coming to my head of what happened back then, like of the thoughts of what was coming into my mind. I guess is what I'm
Yes.
trying to say at that moment. And so I'm able to respond to her, and whatever it is she's saying to me, it's unfair, it wasn't right. And it's like, you're right, it wasn't fair, it wasn't right, they didn't hear you, whatever it is that she needed to hear at the moment. And I'm telling you, it's been really powerful, really
Mm.
powerful.
My body is getting warm as I'm listening to you describe it, because that's what love is. That is true
Yeah.
self love and self care. Is that, Lisa? It sounds like you're able to come outside of yourself as much as it sounds like you're inside of you, right? You're really
Yep.
getting
Yep.
deep to the core. We are addressing the different parts of you, right? As Dick Schwartz talks about in IFS. It's speaking to that little girl, perhaps at 4, 5, 6 years old, in a very different fashion than you would 14, 15, 16-year-old Lisa,
Yeah.
as much as perhaps the needs are the same. A sense of validation. I see you. I
Right.
hear you. That was unfair, right? We have such a need for fairness, especially as teens. It has to be fair. If you're going
Mm-hmm.
to punish one, you're going to punish the other. You're going to give my brother a
Yeah.
car, you're going to give me one too, right? There needs to be some
Mm-hmm.
semblance of fairness so that we can understand, again, our own sense of purpose and worth in this family, let alone, right, in this world.
Right.
Oh, forgive me. I have so many different thoughts. I could go in a million different directions with it. But what a reminder that that being able to validate your younger self is crucial. In fact, I would consider it a first step. Being able to see you and hear you and provide to you the validation and the love and support that again you never got growing up, because maybe mom or grandmom or that teacher or that uncle didn't validate. Maybe they dismissed.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they insinuated that it was silly and you shouldn't care. Whatever they did, right? They didn't sprinkle the love and care onto it that was necessary. And that now becomes our job as adults, right?
Yeah.
To come back home and to find ways to give ourselves everything we didn't get growing up. That's the one thing I can't emphasize enough. Truly choosing to meet your own needs is a beautiful first start.
Mm-hmm. And it's powerful and it's empowering.
Very.
As I've been working through this, like for little Lisa, it was different in that she wanted to confront the abusers.
Mm.
So it was my brother and my mom and my dad. And what was interesting is how it started is my mom was first. And when little Lisa, when I was doing this during EMDR, and the therapist said, tell your mom what it is you want to say. Well, when I came, I'm like, no, oh, no,
Mm.
I can't say to her what I want to say
Mm.
because no, I'll get hurt. And she said, well, why don't you as the adult come alongside her? And that was it. As
Ah.
soon as I came alongside her, it was interesting in my mind. I'm sure this is all in my mind, right? I could see her like stand up straight. And
Yeah.
she spoke to her mother, but very respectfully. She didn't scream. She wasn't disrespectful. She had a voice. And it was very clear and she was very articulate, but she didn't cuss. She didn't scream. She didn't, it was very calm. And it was, and my mom didn't say a word. My mom just stood there and listened.
Wow.
And it was powerful. It was really powerful.
Yeah. Getting your voice, having that sense of agency, really standing in your power with confidence, even if your voice is shaking a little bit, it's being able to say
Yeah.
everything that needed to be said. If I may, I
Yeah.
want to piggyback off of that. So many folks that I work with want to confront their abusers. They want to look so and
Mm,
so in the face and yell and
yeah.
rage and cry and ask questions. Why? The confusion is so real. And there's
Yeah.
so much research out there that suggests that that's not where the closure is. There is no
No.
sense of peace and closure in a conversation, in a relationship with a person who is abusive, emotionally, physically, sexually, all of the ways. And the closure has to come from within. Just as you described, it's the adult in you coming alongside the little girl inside of you and being able to sit with
Mm-hmm.
her. Tell me, little girl, why it wasn't unfair so I can shoulder that with you. Tell me, rage with me, freak out, yell into the abyss with me. I'll do that with you so that you know that how you think and feel is real, what you think and feel is
Mm-hmm.
valid. And if that abuser, right, that person who has harmed you is not the person who's going to be able to provide some semblance of peace, we have to find it within ourselves. And I believe one of the best ways
Yep.
of quote unquote revenge or moving on or satisfaction is to live your life for you, not to prove anything to that
Exactly.
abuser. You're not looking for an apology or some semblance of understanding from that person who, if they understood, let's be honest, would not have hurt you in the first place. There is no healing over
Exactly.
there. The healing is all here.
Right. Right. And so often I think, and I used to think this too, I think, so often we think, oh, well, I'm going to go to them and I'm going to tell them and they're going to feel bad and they're going to, they're going to say they're sorry and they don't.
They don't.
It just, I mean, I think it's probably more common that it ends up being worse than if you hadn't gone to them to begin with. And, and in my case, like my parents are gone. So I couldn't even look them in the face anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I couldn't, so that's not an option. And that's not uncommon. And so you don't need to look them in the face. You don't need to have a conversation with them in order to have closure. You're absolutely right. The closure comes within us. We, it just, the bottom line is it comes down to having a relationship with yourself. And that's part of the relationship
Yes.
with yourself.
Yes. Yes. It's addressing that shame that was put there by somebody else. It's finding a way to love
Right.
you as a survivor, as a fighter, as a human being who didn't deserve what occurred and is now strong enough, capable enough, smart enough, has always been, let's be real, always been smart enough, always been capable of living a life that is without abuse, that is with beauty and with peace on your own terms. Going back to the idea of this healing journey, we're all on one. I think we've all been
Mm-hmm.
mistreated in some fashion. It just looks a little bit different
Right.
for all of us. The intensity
Right.
of what we didn't get growing up now becomes our responsibility. In fact, if I may
Right.
rewind, you said something powerful earlier about being triggered, being activated, and feeling all of the stuff as an adult today, when the truth is what's been activated is all that stuff from back then, which is why
Yep.
the button push, right, as I talk about, feels so
Yeah.
huge because it's activating something
Mm-hmm.
that's 15, 20, 30 years old that's never been resolved. So the fury, right, the frustration, the rage, the sadness, the confusion all just pops right
Yeah.
up into present day. And unless we address
Yep.
that, right, unless we manage emotion truly and heal ourselves, then that stuff will continue to come out. Again, the body keeps the score. The body is holding all
Yep.
of that stuff. And our responsibility as adults is to get rid of it all, to release it, let it sink through the floor out of our
Exactly.
feet so we don't have to carry it and we don't have to pass it
Mm-hmm.
on, whether to the next generation, to our lovers, to our friends, to anybody that we choose to bring into the fold, especially as we're healing.
Exactly. I know it. And I know the difference between a memory and a trigger. A memory is you just remembering it. A trigger, you're reliving it. That's
Yes.
why it's so different. You're right. That's what you're absolutely, excuse me, you're absolutely reliving it. And that's why all those emotions, and boy, it's crazy how they go from, you can be from 0 to 100 in a
Oh,
flash.
like that.
You can be completely calm, something can trigger you, and you are like over the top. All those emotions come over the top. It can be overwhelming, especially when you don't live in it anymore and then it happens.
Mm.
That's the cool thing about the self-awareness, is when it does happen, when you're not living it every day like I was, where
Yeah.
I'm sure when I was in survival mode, I was triggered probably daily, right? I'm not triggered daily anymore. So when I am triggered, it's so obvious to me now. It just stands out to me, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I know
Yeah.
those feelings. I know those emotions. I know that stuff that's going on in me. That's not normal. That is a trigger. And so
Yeah.
then I'm able to address it.
Yes, 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 yes. And it's using those skills that I bet you learned in therapy. It's how kindly
Mm-hmm.
and with love you talk to yourself. It's the acknowledgement that this is not an activation from today. The issue is not in today, it's in yesterday. And how do we, again, come alongside ourselves and with softness and with care say to that little girl inside, that's not happening right now. You are safe. You are okay. You are loved.
Yeah.
I've got your back. I'm here. I'm here now. That's
Mm-hmm.
something I say to my clients all the time. Spend some time looking in the mirror and let yourself really absorb how amazing the
Yeah.
adult in you really is, because now you have your own back. And there is nobody stronger, nobody more capable. Now, how awesome, or excuse me, how lucky am I that my clients choose me to stand next to them as well? I'm just an extra sense of
Yeah.
support. But truly, it has to come from within.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. This has been really good. This has been really good. And the attachment bonds, I know we touched on that, but I think, so much of that, you do need to have therapy and working through so much of the attachment. And I keep saying attachment bonds, but I'll drop the word bond. Sorry, attachments. And that stuff goes really deep. There's deep rooted stuff in you that needs to be, worked out. And you don't need to do this alone.
Never.
You shouldn't do this alone.
No, you shouldn't do this alone.
It's
You shouldn't. You don't have
you're
to. It's not expected
yeah
to. And at the end of the day, there is so much resource. There's so much love and support out there that
yeah
it's. Is it easy to find the right support? Not necessarily. It's almost like dating. We have to try on a couple of things until we find the
true.
right fit.
Interview. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And yet,
Yeah.
the resource is there. Right. The hand is reaching out to you. Grab it. Grab it.
Right. Right. And that's the thing you just touched on. You might not always find the right therapist the first time. That's okay. That's okay. Keep trying. Keep
Yeah.
trying. He or she is out there for you. It doesn't mean anything about you. It just means it just wasn't a right fit. It's okay. Move on and keep looking for that right therapist that's for you.
It's a
He or she's out
journey.
there for you.
It is a
It
journey. It'll
is.
take a lifetime.
It
And
is.
sometimes that means we need multiple supports. Sometimes a
Right.
certain therapist or a
Yeah.
certain, cheerleader in your corner can only take you so far. And that's okay.
Right.
Truly, that is okay. As long
Right.
as the support's there, surround yourself with a village of loving people. So that way you are constantly letting that little kid inside know that what they came from is not what they have to stay in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
So tell our audience how they could reach out to you. and what you have to offer.
Please, my friends, come find me. First, if you're going to Google www.thesassyshrink.com, you'll see my face amongst a purple, beautiful background and read all about me. I am licensed currently in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, which means that I am capable of being your therapist if you live in one of those states. Should you not be in one of those states and you are in the country, you are elsewhere, right? You're in London, you're in Dublin right now listening to this. I'm capable of being your coach, which means we're going to take some of the therapy stuff that I bet you've already explored and we're going to run with it. Please feel free to give me a call, 215-907-7992. Send me a text message, send me an email, reach out. You're not alone, ever. And this is me reaching my hand out, suggesting that if you're ready, if you're willing, if you want to, if you're brave enough, grab my hand and we'll do this together. No matter how long it takes, no matter how much we cry, no matter how many chocolate bars we're eating in a conversation week to week, right? You have a partner in crime. You have support. There is love out there. We just have to be willing, brave enough, right, to reach out for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And
Thank you, Lisa.
I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
I ask all my guests. So what do you want to leave our listeners with? I know.
Oh, right. Only one. I want to thank you for taking the time. I want to thank you for taking the time, for trusting enough in me to bring me into this safe space that you've created, not just for yourself, but for your listeners. I want to thank you for your authenticity. And if I can leave anybody with anything, it's to be authentic. Please, right? Show up as yourself. Be willing to risk any sort of judgment and fear just by being you. I think we live in a world today that is both divisive and scary, and there's a lot going on, and it's also beautiful and open and with such possibility. Personally, I am always trying to demonstrate authenticity, even if it doesn't land, even if folks don't like me, even if it seems unfair. I need to put my head on my pillow at night and be proud of who I am. And the best way that I can do that is by being myself, flaws and all. Right. So I leave you guys with that is to just continue to be yourself in whatever way it looks like. And if you're struggling with that, you'll call me. We'll work on it.
There you go. There you go. I love it. That's beautiful. I love it. And you're so right. You are so right. Yeah. We need to give ourselves a lot of grace. You know, we've had a lot of pain in our life. We need to give ourselves some grace.
Well said.
Enough already, right?
Well said. Yes, enough already. Enough with the abuse and the trauma and the toxicity. How about love? How about compassion? How about empathy? And again, if you're struggling to do that, come slide next to me. We'll do it together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you, Jaclyn, for coming and sharing. And I think we had a really great conversation and touched on a lot of really great things. And I think we're giving our listeners a lot of golden nuggets.
And I hope it's the first of many conversations, Lisa. Thank you so much. And to those of you listening, thank you, guys. I appreciate your time, your energy, your love.
Yes, thank you. And all your links and everything, we'll have it below so they can reach out to you too.
Perfect. Yeah, please let me know.
And everything.
Yeah, let me know if you need anything from me. That's wonderful.